Okay, if you're hearing this, it means I finally uploaded some of this guild boss stuff that I've been working on for months, or kind of just not working on for months. But it's a lot of math, a lot of testing I did. Might as well get it out there. It's not going to be a very fun video, unless you like math, but I think it'll be pretty informative. And I'll be releasing another one too with like kill order and stuff. I don't think I can fit it all in one video, so we're going to go ahead and hurry up and get into it. Although, real quick, I just want to say you're fucking welcome for not having to fight that goddamn monk no more. Or if this video's a little bit older right now, you're welcome that you never had to fight that monk. There's not a lot of strats in this video as much as testing, but I do have Archmage strat at the end. You do not have to kill monk, but we're going to start out with DRR.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with an experiment here using Kendall's spell that does 20% DRR. In this first group I have 50% DRR, I have 30 from the Black Knight, 20% from the Gorgon. Not going to cast a spell, I'm going to track my score 30 seconds in. Then I'm going to rinse and repeat. What this test is going to show us is how much damage resistance the target has, which is the basis really of any strategy for guild bosses. It's the main mitigation factor that we can control, and it has a drastically differing impact depending on your unit damage and the target's damage resistance. So as you can see here, got 9.47 versus 8.17 with an identical run minus the one cast of that spell, which I believe lasts 8 seconds. So that's pretty significant. I mean, that's what, 15%? Maybe not quite. Now this time I'm doing the same experiment, only I ditched the Gorgon, so I only have the Black Knight. It's 30% DRR. And that is lowering the target's damage resistance. The damage resistance goes up against attackers' units damage and gives you what I refer to as effective damage resistance, which caps out at 90%, which, as you can see here, we got the exact same score casting the spell as not casting it. That's because we are still over 90% effective damage resistance. This isn't as complicated as it sounds. I'll break it down here. So let's say we have 80% units damage, and we're attacking something that has 100% damage resistance. 100 minus 80 is 20. They're going to have 20% damage resistance. So after all other calculations, penetration, defense, all that other stuff, well, I don't know if it's the order of operations actually, but if they're all multiplicative, it shouldn't matter, and that's okay. Now I'm making it complicated. But whatever your damage would have been is going to be 20% less because it's 20% damage reduction, and that number can be negative. That is, if you have more units damaged than the target has damage reduction, you do over what your damage normally would have been. So right when you cross that 90% threshold is when you see the biggest increase from adding units damage or lowering damage reduction of the target. So if the target has a shit ton of DR, your base damage is going to be 10%. 90% of it's getting mitigated, so your base is going to be 10%. And if you add DRR, it's going to stay 10%. Add DRR, it's going to stay 10%. If, say, you add it 10 at a time, that's what I do on this graph here. Each 10% DRR you add does nothing at all until you go from 90 to 80. Then all of a sudden you go from doing 10% of your base damage to 20%. You literally double your damage with 10% DRR, right? And then from 80 to 70, you're adding 50% to your damage. And then that goes all the way down until you start getting into negative DR, and then the increase is kind of, well, they don't actually flatten. They will always have a boost. You're just not going to see that 100% increase. So here I'm doing a similar test on Dark Champion, which has a lot more DR because in the next chapter. And I'm actually able to narrow it down within 10%. Where if I add 10% DRR with a cast of AB, it does nothing. But if I add 20% with Gorgon, which is a constant 20, then casting Kendall's spell does make a difference. So within 10%, we can determine then that Dark Champion's damage resistance is equal to my marksman's units damage, which is kind of weird. It was a bad boss to do this test on, to be honest, because marksman's he's ranged, and so he gets unit damage based on how far away he is, and the hitbox is all fucked up on Dark Champion. It still is. But in any case, the Dark Champion's damage resistance is 90% plus the marksman's unit damage plus all the DRR there listed on the left, and 20% for a Kendall spell. So understanding when you are over 90% effective DR can impact your strategy.
And I will get into that, but the defining factor of this game mode is this ability here. Every time you land a critical hit on any of these bosses, they stack damage resistance and unit damage. So, fast attacking, often critting 9-mans like Sharpies really are kind of gimped for this mode. That's one of the primary reasons why people do so well with melee builds, which are more expensive. I can do decent with melee. I have the same issue though because my #1 damage dealer by far in melee is Black Knights, who crit basically as much as Sharpies. Now, if your main damage dealers are Hydra and Mantis and Revi and other one-mans, you won't get nearly as many crits, so you can do pretty well, even though nothing's pure damage output matches Sharpies, and they're cheap, and I have million power marksmen, so that's why I'm doing these runs, and I do most of my runs. Like the one that just ran in the background, it's Elves and Black Knights, got 7 million in 30 seconds, just did it again, but cast Kendall's DRR move 10 seconds in, and got 8 million. BKs and Kendall spell alone are enough to get effective DR below 90%. But here's what we're actually testing. I'm going to wait 10 more seconds before I cast Kendall's spell here, 20 seconds in instead of 10 seconds in, and end up with 7 million, same as the control group. Because during those 10 seconds I got so many crits that the dragon's damage resistance got high enough that the Kendall spell didn't get us below 90%. Okay, so those Chapter 3 Red Dragon tests were done in July. Here's Chapter 5 Red Dragon, same skills, has more DRR. We can tell already because I need Bone Dragon, Cyclops, and Gorgon in order to have an effect. So here's a control run. 24 million, 45 seconds left. I'm not using the Black Knight because I wasn't sure how far into the fight I'd need to test, and his DRR only lasts 30 seconds. So in this one we cast it 13 seconds into the fight, and we've already passed the control run. It's going to give us like 50% boost, 33 million, so basically 50% increase in damage. There's definitely a sweet spot, and we're pretty close to it. Now here I cast at 35 seconds into the fight, just 10 seconds before I'm taking the score, and we're going to score 24 million just like the control. Gonna do a couple more though, trying to narrow it down a little bit closer. I'd like to test exactly how quick the crits are causing DR to go up. It's possible to do, but this lineup isn't ideal for pinpointing exactly how quickly it can stack because of Bone Dragon. Because of the fear, but it's up for 10 out of 12 seconds. And you can see when it's cast, so it's not terrible. But it would still be easier to do on an earlier level. So this one here I'm casting with 20 seconds before I'm taking score. Again, still 24 million. So this time I'm casting it right away. The fear just slightly overlaps the first fear. Kendall spell lasts 5 seconds, and I shouldn't have more than 2 seconds downtime on fear, except for at the beginning. He doesn't cast the first fear for a while, so there's still an improvement though, 4 million. Or what, like 18% improvement? And one more for good measure. I'm casting this one 6 seconds before it did nothing, and 6 seconds after it gave me 50% extra damage. And we're going to get another good 6 million boost, 25% boost. So if we charted it out here, it'd be a little like this. So real quick, I mean, I only did, 5 runs, so I don't have a whole lot of data points. Restarting those things are such a bitch. But what I did, so here's 45 seconds. If I cast Kendall spell, 35 seconds in, I got 0% increase. 25 seconds in, 0% increase. 6 seconds before that, I got 25%. 6 seconds before that, I got like 50. And casting it as soon as I could, I got just under 20. So you can see, it's not a lot of points, but there's a big spike right there. Now that's going to be peak DRR for everybody. You wouldn't see as big of a spike in damage if you were going from, like -20 to -30 effective DRR. But because I'm going from 90 to somewhere between 70 and 90, get a big old spike right there. Now, if you aren't getting as many crits as I was getting, then it might be more of a plateau like this. But it's the critical hits I'm getting that is driving my damage down. And bear in mind, that's 50% damage for the whole 45 seconds increase, and it was only 5 or 8 seconds worth of that spell. So my basic strategy is just get the DRR as low as possible and hit him real fucking hard just for a few seconds. So I know I'm spending a long time on this, but this is the mechanic that really defines these fights. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my base group, -1 unit. I think Cyclops is one I don't bring. And Cyclops isn't amazing. He can keep 24% DRR up. When he's frenzied, he can do a little bit of damage, and he's a one-man, so he's not getting a bunch of crits, which is the whole crux of the issue here. Anyway, Revi's 3-star weapon move and then Bone Dragon's Fear both hit. Manticore and Nightmare are stacking DRR. Manticore only on melee bosses. Now, Nightmare is stacking DRR while our crits are stacking DR. So the very beginning of the fight is really important. And you can see here I have double attack speed emblems. Right now it's at 55% attack speed. Now it seems excessive. I also use these emblems for my washwort for spitting out bees, which is handy. But this may seem like overkill, but we're looking at one of my older tests here now to demonstrate just how important attack speed is at the very beginning of the fight here. So doing 3 runs, just moving the mage. On this one, it's not buffing anything except for Bone Dragon. And these are the damages every 15 seconds. So at 15, I was at 27.67 mil. 30, I was at 68.29 mil. And 84.44 million after 45 seconds. Now, Archmage buffs speed and unit damage. I believe it's 12 attack speed. I'll throw it up on the screen. So now I'm giving that unit damage to and the attack speed to my marksmen and my black knights. So you can see here, the extra attack speed for those 2 9-mans is raising the DR quicker on the enemy with crits. So I'm behind. I'm behind 15 seconds and I'm behind 30 seconds. But I pass after 45 seconds because of the unit damage. And also the attack speed once I'm over 90% DRR is helping. I wish I had done the first one for a minute, but I didn't. But now I'm going to do another run with the mage buffing the lane with Manticore and most importantly Nightmare. Now, right now at the start of 15 seconds, we're only at 23.5 million. I'm behind both runs. I guess that Bone Dragon got a couple good hits in. But because Nightmare had that attack speed in the very beginning of the fight, it stacked DRR pretty quick, and I wasn't stacking DR on the enemy with crits so quickly. So you could see very quickly, by 30 seconds in, I'm well ahead of both other runs and stay ahead by 10% of the better run. And that one had the extra unit damage on my mage, from my mage on my marksman, as well as the attack speed from the mage. So attack speed, especially in the beginning of the fight, can make a big difference with Nightmare. That's why here's another test I did back then. Now you can see here I'm just doing a run with a basic group, not quite a full group, not casting any spells at all, recording damage at intervals. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to cast 1 Mirth on support at the start and then no spells. And again, record the damage at those same intervals. And, this next run was no good, but here, look at the totals. 40% more damage just from casting Mirth on the support at the start. I did some more, but here, I'll show a newer one. So people go to test which buff is better. Here, I'm doing another run with Mirth. And a minute or 30 seconds in, I'm at 1.8 billion. Now here I'm doing one with Slayer, and 30 seconds in, I'm at 2.2 billion. So people run a basic test like that, and then they're like, oh, Slayer's way better, case closed. But now I'll do the run, casting Mirth first on my Nightmare, and then setting it on auto. And because the Nightmare's stacking that DR level quicker, I'm at 2.3, almost 2.4 billion at 30 seconds. So the crit thing, the mechanic that determines which buff you want to use. Now, if you're not using Marksman for your DPS, you probably still do better with Slayer because high morale gives Marksman damage and attack speed. Not damage, attack, but that increases his damage. And is what Slayer gives you. Now in this test, we're going to isolate the Nightmare as what's doing that, as well as demonstrate another little trick for getting the DR from crits and the versus your DRR levels balanced out. So this was was just a base run with 7 of my main team, and I recorded my damage at 15 seconds in and 30 seconds in, and then I cap, about 41 seconds here left. So here's what I'm going to add, and actually I'm leaving this in because there isn't really anything funny in this video yet. Look at me trying to get my goddamn Dragon Golem out. It's my weakest unit. I can't get at it. Come here, you little fucker. I gotta fucking take another unit and put it out there so he'll pop into range. Because he's only 3 stars and whatever, he's weak. But he's going to stop everything but tanks at the start, which is himself and Nightmare. So Nightmare gets to get up there and start applying that DRR before anything's attacking, particularly the marksmen who are get a shit ton of crits. So you can see here at 15 seconds, we've got barely over half of what we got in the first 15 seconds in the last match because we were standing around instead of fighting for a little while. But that extra DRR, look at that shit. Because the base level when we started fighting of the DRR was slightly better, We were 200 million higher at 1 minute and capped about 5 seconds earlier. Now, using a unit that actually had a bunch of DRR instead of Dragon Golem would work better. But it's a trick. You can use it also on the Beholders in Chapter 5 if you get lucky and they mind control your marksman to start out. And that also brings us here to Archmage finally. So everyone's been killing Monk because it worked to get to the 5 chests. But Archmage is easier, and I tested it, and it will also get you to the same 5 chests and gives you the same component. So it has the same ability as Monk, only instead of low morale wiping your team, if you poison it, it wipes your team. And Manticore doesn't even stack DRR on ranged bosses. So that means Bone Dragon can come and Lord Heart BKs, which is nice. It also shares a skill with Monk that every time you cast a spell, your mana regen is lowered, stacking up to 9 times. So you'll see my casting when I do these fights. And then the final skill, instead of the Monk, which dispels all your buffs every 5 seconds, Mage will Whirlwind. It says 3 of your units, but it seems like it does more than that, for 5 seconds every 10 seconds. So, I don't know if you remember back in the day using Genie and DI and doing it over and over again until you got the red and green buffs on one of your Sharpies. In a similar fashion here, I have it set up so that my marksman, actually most of my team, gets whirlwinded right here in this first whirlwind, but my nightmares do not, and I can mirth them. Luckily, like the Genie, it will stay that way too. Although, then once you start casting, it gets RNG. You'll see here on the next whirlwind also catch my marksman. You also notice that after that mirth on the nightmare, mirth, frenzy, and on marksman, and then Armageddon's Blade, and then I'm not casting anything but mirth and frenzy and Armageddon's Blade. Because I don't want my mana regen to get down too low, I have mana buffed, and so I'll get to cast one last Frenzy. I won't run out of mana. And you see I'm putting a pretty decent score here. I mean, against Monk, I didn't do Monk this last month, so I don't know exactly what kind of score I've been getting on Monk, but this is definitely better than anything I did the previous month on Monk. Now, I also did find out that your own Archmage, if she whirlwinds the boss, then they won't be whirlwinding you, just like that prevents the dispels on Monk. But I couldn't find a lineup. I didn't try that long to find a lineup with the mage that ended up with marksman being whirlwinded at the start, but not nightmare. So again, really important in the beginning of the fight. That's why big amounts of DRR early in the fight are good. That's why Naga does so well here. If she has Darkness Enlightenment equipped, Magic Awake applies all 25 stacks instantly, which is like getting a bunch of Nightmare stacks at the beginning. I have my Black Knight and my Ice Elemental with DEs, and my Black Knight gets in the first Frenzy, so those stacks get up pretty quick for me, but Naga is really useful for that. I don't even know if people realize that's why she's so useful, but she is. And just in case you don't believe me yet about how important this is, watch this fight, what happens different here, and how different the score is. So every run, the first whirlwind goes the way I want, but in this run, the second whirlwind does not get my fucking DPS. Look at that score. Just take the fuck off. Cha-ching! That's how you get the points. Now, this particular day, I only did it one of the 3 runs, and that is a bit RNG. The seed stays the same, but it changes right away because we're manually casting, because we want to cast Mirth on the Nightmare, and also because we don't want to cast a bunch of spells and drive our mana regen down. Also, waiting before the spells helps you to get a stockpile of mana. But you can basically guarantee that the first whirlwind goes the way you want. You just gotta get lucky on the second one. You'll get a bunch of score, and you can exit out and redo it if you want. Definitely can get a lot more, no matter what your strategy is. You can bring Bone Dragon. That alone is going to make Archmage easier, and that should help everybody out. And I'm doing 5% a run. The bitch is going to drop quicker than Twee's mom's panties. Damn, it's like 20 minutes long, 19 minutes. I still got kill order specific boss strategies, faction bonuses, winded disregard, unit damage, and DRR alternate unit to be subbed in, bosses that are broken. There's a lot of stuff yet for me to cover, but at least I finally got this stuff out. Like I said, a lot of this testing's from July, and it's November now. So I'm glad I got this out. I know a lot of you are waiting for it. I hope it helps some of y'all, and as always, stay tuned for more, and thanks for watching.